G'day and welcome back everybody to Apio Puzzles. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different. I'm going to be walking through this puzzle on screen which I built, walking through the solve of this and then having a chat about it and about the idea behind this style of puzzle. So this I'm referring to as a crypoetic, which is a poem and a cryptic rolled into one. And this particular example is a haiku poem, so 5 syllables, 7 syllables and 5 syllables in those clues, and as you'll see the answers all have relate to each other in a particular way. So I'm going to walk through the solve of it and then we'll have a chat about some of the challenges in putting these kinds of things together, and indeed seeking some feedback on what people think about certain bits and pieces. So without further ado, the solve. Oh, let's not do that. Okay, so let me just double check. Yes, you can still see everything. Okay, so one across here, king in sight of queen, two across rather, king his flanks exposed on board, and 3 king you captured march. So you may like to have a go at these, of course. There's not a link in the description because I can't get the software to put the clues in order, so it might be one to do on paper. A little warning in terms of difficulty: I think that the third clue is the hardest, second is probably the easiest, and the first is in the middle somewhere. So king inside of queen, this is a cryptic definition, so you need to think of what this sentence could mean other than what it superficially seems to mean. So king inside of queen seems to mean, especially in the context of this poem, the king on the chessboard is on a line with the queen, is being seen by the queen. But another way of considering it is if we have an actual king and queen who are a couple, then the king from the point of view of the queen is her mate. So king inside of queen is mate. And you might notice that mate is a chess term, so that might be relevant as well. Now, number 2, king his flanks exposed on board. So this is the easier of them. There's a slightly, maybe slightly verbose indication here, if that's the right term for it. If we take the word king and we expose his flanks, that is the K and the G, the outside letters, we expose those, so get rid of them, we're left with in, and to be in something is to be on board. So if you're in a plane, you're on board a plane. So we have mate in, and then we have this third clue here, king you captured march. Now this is, I think, the most difficult, particularly on account of, well, yeah, I suppose every element of this is pretty tricky, and the ordering of the words are as well. Excuse me. So king we often think of as K, but there is another abbreviation of king which is R, and we're going to put R inside of a word for you. So the word you is capturing the R, and an old word for you is the. So the capturing R is 3. Now often you as the would be indicated as you once, or old you, that kind of thing, to indicate that it's a previous kind of synonym, or an outdated synonym, but with the constraints of haiku, I had to just leave that as you. And then you might ask why March is 3. Well, March is the 3rd month now, and that's the basis for it. The fact of March being the 3rd month, I don't think in itself is adequate justification for March and 3 being synonymous. And my basis for this was that quite literally when you say certain dates out loud, you would say 12/3/75, that kind of thing. You know, you say your birthday. Certainly when I say my birthday, I would use the numbers for both the day and the month. And so from that point of view, when you say 7/3, the 3 does mean March. So that's my justification. It is slightly a stretch. I think technically it's sound, but it's a stretch in the sense that it's not at all an everyday kind of synonym you would think of, and it's not one that I've seen used in cryptics before. Although I'm surprised if it's never been used. It seems like a useful tool. I'd be interested to hear whether you guys think that that's a justified way of referring to 3. So and now let me just have a think, and I might cut to when I stop thinking if this takes too long, about if there's anything further to comment on the clues. King inside of queen, king is flanks exposed on board, all fine, king you captured. Yeah, that ordering of king you captured, normally you'd say you captured king, which would indicate more clearly what's happening, but this is kind of shuffling that about. I think it's valid still to do that. You're saying king when you has captured it, march. Being constrained to syllables here was very tricky, so I would have liked the third clue to be structured a bit differently, because obviously you captured is awkward grammar, and I could have put your captured. That would still suffice in terms of syllables, but your captured felt grammatically incorrect in terms of what the indication was. You'd prefer something like you've captured. So yeah, I had to play around, and this was the best I could come up with. An alternative to captured was caught, which would have the same cryptic meaning and would give me an extra syllable, but I didn't like the fact that caught is not a term that's used in chess, whereas captured is. Now, you may have noticed one of the kind of part of the conceit here is that mate in 3 being the answer is well, one, it's a chess term, so a mate in 3 means that there's a checkmate available in 3 moves, and it's a 3-line poem, so we have our mate in 3. So that's it for the discussion of this particular puzzle. In terms of discussing the paradigm here, or this idea of poetry and cryptics combined, it began life in Japan, as it happens, where I was given a book of haiku, and it got me thinking about the prospect of poetic haiku type puzzles. I had thought in the past about that it would be nice to be able to write a crossword where the clues form some sort of narrative or story or poem. And then this haiku idea struck me as quite nice because it's only 3 clues, so it's less of an ordeal to clue, although it's made more difficult by these constraints. Also less of an ordeal to solve, with the same caveat. And it gives a certain nice structure to work around, and yeah, I found it very interesting and fun to try to build these up. I did the first one I published as well. I might make a link to that, or I don't know if I did a video on that one. I don't think I did, but that was more clearly haiku in its style, in that it wasn't just the syllables, but the subject matter was nature, and it had a certain kind of poetic juxtaposition between the first 2 lines and the final line, whereas this one was just pretty pragmatic, trying to get 3 lines that worked as cryptic clues, that had the right number of syllables, and that related to chess. It's very difficult to work within this constraint from a setting point of view, and it's on that basis that in this puzzle I deliberately ignored, within reason, the question of difficulty from the solver's point of view. Obviously I didn't want to use things that were unfair, and I didn't want to use things that were entirely impossible or unreasonable for the solver, but at the same time I just had no liberty or no luxury to play around with these clues to make them easier when they were difficult. Particularly the third clue there, king you captured march. March is obviously a very atypical indication for the word 3, and some might actually argue that's not really defensible. I'm fairly confident in my own mind that it is. But the problem with that clue was that the word 3 is very difficult to find an appropriate definition element for in a single, or in 1 or 2 syllables, which was the maximum I was ever going to be able to use. That also made sense within the context of chess. So there's a lot that you're having to satisfy there. And even if it didn't have anything to do with chess, 3 just is not an easy word to define in an alternate way. And particularly if you're constrained to 1 or 2 syllables. So I just, when I found that as a potential definition, I thought, yeah, I have to use this, because I'd done a lot of thinking on this and hadn't found anything good, and March was perfect given that it also fit with the chess motif. It was not my intention when I built this for king to be the first word of each clue, but I'm really glad that that's how it turned out. I think, trying to remember now the order of events, king inside of queen came pretty naturally, and I think then clue 2 as well, I had the 2 kings, and so I had in mind that I could try to get a 3rd king on the bottom rung as well. So yeah, so the constraining nature of the haiku setup has led to some difficulty that, you know, probably I would prefer it not to be as hard as that if I could avoid it. And since doing this one, I've been doing a few others, and I've not constrained myself to haiku. In fact, not even to three clues. The one I'm working on at the moment has 4 clues, and I think I quite like the idea of doing haiku ones, and I will do more. But they do feel as if, on the whole, they're so constraining as to be maybe more difficult to set and solve than what I would like. As a general rule, I think where I find one that I can do without too much pain, I will. And the other thing, of course, is that not only are they constrained to syllables, but they're constrained to 3 lines. And you know, there's a lot of expression. So this is an expression mate in 3. Generally, what I've been trying to do is to find an expression of this kind of this nature, and flesh out some clues for it in a poem form. And many times, you know, the expression has more than 3 lines, so they can't be done in haiku. The one I'm working on at the moment, although not a haiku and so unrestrained in that sense, as I was building it, it started to kind of take on, by accident, some rhyming and some regular meter, and so I've ended up constraining myself along those lines. So that is, yeah, it's on the edge of being perfect, but that's very difficult as well. So beyond that, I think probably next time I'll try to, as I'm starting to get some skill around this, just to not be too concerned about rhyming or meter. It's hard not to be a little concerned with particularly meter. It feels really satisfying when the meter's kind of regular in some way. But yeah, I'm interested to know what people think in terms of the difficulty of this, whether this is a fun thing to solve. In some sense, I'm not, at the moment I'm treating this as an interesting project for myself. Like I find the challenge of building these interesting, I find the outcome satisfying from a poetic and a cryptic point of view, even if they're hard. This one here with the in not crossing any words was a bit annoying, because of course it leaves you with only one checking letter available, and it's only an E in the mate and the 3, so it's not a great checking letter if you're struggling with both of those clues, which are the harder of the 3 clues. Was there anything else that I wanted to mention? No, I don't think so. I think that covers it. So as I said, any feedback is very welcome, good or bad. And I am interested to understand what people think about March equaling 3 in particular. I think that's probably the only thing that's particularly contentious about this cryptically. King, his flanks exposed, you know, the use of the word his in there is maybe a little misdirecting or throwing to the solver, because of course king, it's not the king himself whose flanks are being exposed, but the word king, and so his is kind of is in some sense the incorrect possessive to use there. But anyway, the minor points there. But I think march in 3 is the challenge, and I'm curious to see what people think. And I also would just say, if you're interested in setting cryptics, these are fun to do. They're hard in their own way, but there's only 3 or 4 clues to do. And they give a nice kind of idea or theme to hang your thinking off. And yeah, be prepared to spend a bit of time with the dictionary, finding weird synonyms or weird abbreviations. There we go. I will stop waffling now, and I'll see you all again on the next video.